Danae, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Shalise. Good afternoon, everybody. I talked to Shalise a little while ago and heard that you guys had a really great keynote with Improv Edge this morning. How was that? Good? I'm seeing some good faces. Yes, and yes, that mindset. Yes, and. So we had Improv Edge present for our Innovate Extension event a couple of years ago. And they're just such a pleasure. So I'm hopeful that was energizing for you and creative and kind of got some of those juices flowing, because now we're going to talk about Facebook, which is one of my favorite things to talk about because I'm a lover of Facebook. And I almost hate to say that because Shalise and I were also talking about that new Netflix documentary. What was it called? Is it like the Social Dilemma or something, about how attached we all are to social media these days and how damaging that can be for people? We're going to not talk about the negative part of Facebook and social media. We're going to talk about how we can leverage the use of this platform for really engaging new audiences, for keeping current audiences engaged and informed. And I welcome your questions and input as we go along with the next hour session. I'm going to start off by just sharing some overarching information about the use of Facebook, and then I'm going to kind of dive in. We'll do kind of a deeper dive, still keep it pretty basic because this is a 101 course, not a 201 or 501 course. So I'll kind of dig into Facebook settings a little bit and offer some recommendations for how you can be successful in your use of Facebook. So you can open up your participants window and use the raise hand feature, or if you have your cameras on, you can just raise your actual hand. How many of you are currently using Facebook for work? Yep, seeing some hands. That's great. How many of you are here because you've not used Facebook for work in any way, but you want to learn how to? Seeing some thumbs up for that too. Faye, I kind of saw your hand go up for maybe a couple. So maybe you're like kind of learning how to use it. You're kind of on that cusp. That's great. We're going to kind of gear in on that. Maybe you're using it, but you want to learn how to use it more effectively. This will also be really beneficial for those who have been using it and just want to know how to be a little bit more engaging. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. And let's get started. Again, I'm going to open up the chat on my computer, on my screen, so I can see your questions come in. Feel free to stop and feed me those questions at any point in time, because I am here for you. I'm here to answer your questions, and I might not be able to answer everything, but I can probably find the answer for you if I don't have it. So let's jump right in to talk about Facebook pages. A Facebook page is a little bit different than a Facebook profile and a Facebook group. And I always like to start by providing that differentiation, because oftentimes we refer to everything and anything on Facebook as a Facebook page. So there are three primary types of Facebook presences. There is your Facebook profile, which represents you as an individual person. And per Facebook policy, you can only have one profile that represents you as a person. The reason why I like to mention that is because sometimes people have approached me and said, I want to completely disconnect my personal Facebook presence from anything that I'm doing with my page for work purposes. I don't want to be connected to that at all. Unfortunately, with the way Facebook terms and regulations work, or terms of service work, you have to have a physical presence on Facebook in order to manage a page. So you have to have a profile in order to be an administrator for a page, and you're not allowed to have more than one profile representing you as a person. So I know that some people are creating dummy accounts out there just as a means to connect their work page to their profile. In theory, that is against Facebook terms of service. And I say that only because if Facebook wanted to, they could delete one of your accounts. And I have heard of that happening in the past. So your personal profile represents you as a person. That's where you put your information like your name, and you could put your occupation or hobbies. You can communicate with people on your Facebook profile. Your timeline is what it's called now. It used to be called, what was it called? It wasn't called your timeline in years past. And then you also have your news feed. And your news feed is basically a curated feed of content that Facebook, through their algorithms, feeds you based on how you interact with people and pages on Facebook. So you can be friends with people. You can also like brands and pages and follow brands and pages. And based on all of those connections that you have across the Facebook platform, Facebook will then feed you a customized, curated feed of content that shows up in your news feed. So that's you as a profile. That's your presence as a profile. Then we have Facebook pages, which typically represent brands, organizations, celebrities. It can represent people, but it represents people not in their personal profile. It represents them as some sort of public figure. So a lot of government officials might have a page that represents them. We have celebrities that have pages. A lot of extension counties have an extension page. So how many of you are managing some sort of extension page for work? I see Marianne raise her hand, and you can just throw these into the chat as well. And how many of those pages represent your entire county versus how many represent a specific program area in your county? So if you just want to type into the chat, if you're managing a Facebook page, so Sarah says a county, Faye says county. Anybody else? One county, Marianne. Is anybody representing like or managing maybe multiple Facebook pages across different program areas in your county? Jamie, county extension and a 4-H page. That's pretty common, I think, across a lot of counties. Yeah, both for Katie. So yeah, that's pretty common. So you could be managing, multiple pages. So now you have multiple feeds to be, creating and curating content for. A page is nice because it kind of represents one-way communication. You have a lot more control over what happens on a page because you, as the brand administrator or page administrator, can basically just feed content out through your page timeline. And then the people who follow and like your page will hopefully end up seeing that content appear in their newsfeed and they can interact with it. But it's a one-way communication. You can open up an avenue for people to post to your page, and I will show you how to do that if you want to. That gets a little bit tricky because now people can post to your page, but it ends up going into a completely separate newsfeed or timeline separate from your page's timeline. And I'll show you how to access that. There are benefits to doing that, and there are some negatives as well. And then there's Facebook groups. How many of you are managing any sort of Facebook group? And a group is different than a page in that you have your group administrators, but anybody who's a part of that group can now comment and contribute to the primary feed or timeline of that group. So it creates way more two-way communication. We have a group for our learning and organizational development unit. Some of you are probably members of that group. Everybody can go in there and post a question. They can go in there and post a video or post content, and then everybody in the group has the ability to see that. Groups are actually one of the most engaging presence types on Facebook. They're more engaging than a personal profile, and they're more engaging than a page as well. So Astra says you have groups for older youth. Is anybody else managing any sort of group on Facebook? They tend to be really great for kind of narrowed in specific like topic areas, as opposed to Sarah, yes, the support staff one. I know there's also a 4-H group. That's wonderful. Groups are, again, one of the most engaging types of presence that you can have on Facebook. We are going to be talking primarily about the management of pages for the rest of this session. The other thing I wanted to mention is the difference between page follows and page likes, because these are two completely separate things, but they're very similar. So you may have noticed, for those who currently manage a Facebook page, you have page followers, but then you also have people who like your page. So what is the difference here, and why do these two different things exist? Page likes are the people who have said, I like your brand and I want the world to know that I like your brand. So for example, let's take a brand like Coca-Cola. I could like Coca-Cola's page. I'm basically telling the world I'm a fan of Coca-Cola. I like this brand. Now, page follows are the people who have chosen to receive your page updates in their newsfeed. Of course, this is subject to the Facebook's algorithm, because even if you follow a page, it doesn't necessarily mean that Facebook is going to feed you content from that page. And that sounds really counterintuitive, but I'll explain that a little bit more in depth as we go through the session here. So by default, if you like a page, by default, you automatically follow it. So you should start to receive those page updates appear in your newsfeed. But you can like a page and unfollow it. Those are what I like to call ghosts. They're like the ghost followers, because they will never see your content appear in their newsfeed because they've chosen to unfollow your page. So yes, they're like, hey, we support you, but we don't support you enough to actually see your content. And because we're not seeing it, we're not engaging with it. And because we're not engaging with it, your engagement rates are going to start to plummet. So ideally, you want people to both like and follow your page. That's the fundamental goal. For those of you who currently manage a Facebook page, I would encourage you to open that up right now and take a look at your page followers, the number, and your page likes. And are those numbers different? So I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead and do that. If you have easy access to your page, open it up and find your numbers. And then type those into the chat box. Page likes versus page follows. And if you're having trouble finding that, hang tight because I'm going to kind of orient you to the overarching interface of a Facebook page and where to find certain information in just a few minutes. So is anybody easily finding that data? I'll give you another minute or so. Was anybody able to find page likes versus page followers? And if you have those numbers, go ahead and type them into the chat for us so we can see what those look like. All right, Astra, first one, 976 likes, but 1,042 followers. That's great. So you have more followers than you have likes. So Marianne, 730 likes versus 750 follows. That's also great. Faye said, I just started the page, 0 likes and 0 follows. Help me. Hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll have some good information to kind of carry forward and get those likes and follows up. Now that's great because so far what we're seeing, okay, Jamie, yours is a little bit different. Nope, it's not. More followers than you have likes. That's what you want to see. You want to see more followers than you have likes because that means, and we didn't actually talk about that, these are people who have actually chosen to follow your page, but they're not liking it, but they're still receiving your page updates in their newsfeed. And that's what matters because that's where engagement is going to come from. So now we have a bunch more numbers pouring in here. So page likes and follows for Sarah, yours is pretty similar. Marianne, yours is also pretty, nope, you've got about 100 difference. And Katie, yours is almost the same number as well. So that's the thing is if you have a ton more likes than you have follows, you need to start questioning your content a little bit because that means that people have chosen to like your page by default. At one point, they were also following it. So they were receiving your updates in their newsfeed. But at some point, they probably got so annoyed with what you were doing that they decided to unfollow it. So you have to start to question like what happened and what can I do differently to re-engage those people? And again, that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about here today. Now, I do not manage any Facebook page in any extension capacity. So I'm going to be sharing with you screenshots and when we get into the settings from my personal page that I manage for my photography and conservation work. I do manage some Facebook groups for extension, but we're not really talking about groups today. So hopefully you don't mind seeing pictures of insects and spiders because that's what my page is about. If you don't, just close your eyes and you can just listen to me talk. Hopefully no like scary bugs or anything that you'll see here. So this is what your page, if you go on to your Facebook page and you are not signed in to Facebook, this is what you'll see. I like looking at this view because this is basically what your consumers are going to see. This is what the people who like your page are going to end up seeing. So let's talk a little bit about some of these elements here. Way up at the top, upper left-hand corner, we have our profile photo. The college and the university do have some templates that are branded if you want to pull one of those, and you can put whatever photo you want behind it, but then there's like a nice red bar that says extension on it. So you can brand your page like that. I think those are the only templates available to us. And I'm trying to remember if we're allowed to put our county name in that, like if you could put like Summit County Extension or Wayne County Extension, or not. I'm going to have to look at what the policy says because there's been some shifts in that. But please know that there are branded templates that you can pull from, and I can help navigate you to those, and I can also help teach you how to use them because traditionally they have only been in Photoshop format, and I can provide some PowerPoint templates if needed. The other thing I want to show you is the big cover photo that you have at the very top of your page. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about cover photos in a minute because this is a really grand opportunity to showcase your brand, to showcase your page in a single photo, or you could pull in multiple photos and do a collage. You can do any number of different things, but there are some considerations you need to make about what type of content to include in your cover photo. Again, we'll get back there in a second. You have your primary page navigation. So here, if I'm a visitor, I can go straight to post. I can navigate to photos. So I only see a feed of photos. The community tab takes you to, because I allow people to post to my page, this will take you to a curated feed of content from other people who have posted on my page. And then over here on the right-hand side, we see the cover photo. There is an opportunity to have a big call to action button right here. That call to action button you can change. So you can change that to your county website. You can change that to a site that will allow people to subscribe to an e-newsletter if you have that. You can add, there's a whole different list of options. I'm trying to think of the ones that are most relevant to extension. The send a message one would be allowing people to send you a message via Facebook or via email. So you can also put an email address in there and people can send you or somebody else in your office an email directly through clicking that button, which is a really nice feature. That's the call to action button. And I highly encourage you to consider, I didn't mean to click forward yet. I highly encourage you to consider what specifically you're going to include there. And I'll show you how to edit that too once we get back to the page. I'm navigating all over my page right now, so give me one sec to get back to where we were. So the next thing that you have access to is your page's story. This is like a more in-depth about us story. You can have that there or you don't have to. I have one there because it's just a quick, easy snapshot of what I am and who I'm about. And then you have your little community box. This shows you the difference between your page likes and your page follows. And of course, we do want to see more follows than we see likes, or we want to see those kind of leveled out. And then you have some like general about us, contact information, and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about cover photo. For those of you who access Facebook, maybe on a desktop and on a mobile device, is there anything weird that you have seen about the Facebook cover photo? And I would encourage you, again, for those of you who currently manage pages, to pull up, if you have a smartphone or a tablet, pull up your page on your smartphone. Take a look at the orientation or the aspect ratio of your cover photo on your mobile device, and then take a look at your desktop. And what do you notice? This has been one of my biggest frustrations about Facebook since I've started using it, and especially over the last couple of years. The one thing that you will likely notice is the orientation or the aspect ratio of your photo is entirely different, whether you're on a mobile device versus a desktop. So this little graphic here shows us the difference. So on a desktop, what people see is 820 by 312 pixels. So that is represented by this gray box. It becomes sort of longer, narrower, and squatter. So your desktop version of your cover photo ends up getting pretty severely cropped on the top and the bottom, versus viewing something on a smartphone where it ends up being even more severely cropped on the left and the right-hand side. So you might be wondering, well, does this really matter? And the answer is it depends on what you have showing in your photo. So here is an example of a local pizza company that had an advertisement showed in their cover photo. And this is what that advertisement showed if you were viewing it on a mobile device. A one-topping pizza for $1.49. In actuality, it was $11.49. You can kind of see the outline of the other one here. But when you viewed this photo on a mobile device, you're like, oh man, that's a great deal for a one-topping pizza. And then you go to a desktop and it's an entirely different price. So you need to kind of understand where that cropping is going to happen with your photo. For me, because I have text in my photo, I had to ensure that I'm putting that text in a place on that photo that it's not going to get cropped out and look weird. So what I would recommend is you either keep this orientation in mind so that you know the important part of your photo goes where these two things overlap, and make sure that any text isn't going to get cropped, or just include a photo that you don't need to worry about the cropping so much. But you may also want to consider, like, is somebody's face being halfway cropped out, or is something else weird going on? That matters. I know that seems maybe super specific and nuanced, but from a design perspective, people want to see that your page looks professional. And when you have a photo like this, where half of your image is cropped, and it creates a completely different user experience, it just looks a little bit less professional. So that's what I wanted to mention about that. So you can see my cover photo. This is what it looks like on a mobile device. The bee is still here in the photo. The text is still here in the photo. But on a desktop, this photo looks completely different. You end up seeing more of the sides here on the left and the right, and then it's a little bit cropped on the top and the bottom. But everything is still in focus and in the photo and not cropped, whether you're experiencing my page on a mobile or whether you're experiencing it on a desktop. So those are just some simple things to keep in mind. Now let's talk a little bit about Facebook engagement, because this is really, I think, the meat of this conversation. Facebook engagement, we talked a little bit about likes and follows, and likes and follows are important because those are people who like your brand, they like your page, they like your county extension office, and they want to follow you for updates on social media. But just because they follow you on social media doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily see your content show up in their newsfeed. So we don't care so much about the numbers. We care about the rate of engagement. And Facebook engagement comes in the form of reactions. It comes in the form of comments on post, shares of posts, and then clicks on post. So a click would be if you had a video that you posted, somebody would click into that video and make it full screen so that they could see it. A click could also be a click on a photo. It could also be if you included a third-party link in your post, it could be a click on that link that takes them someplace else. These are all ways that people can tell Facebook, I'm interested in this content. So they engage with it somehow. So here is what a typical post would look like on social media. So people are scrolling through their news feed, they come across this post, they can hover over this like button, the little thumbs up, and they get a number of reactions that appear, and they can choose a reaction. They can comment on it, and then their comments are going to go down here under the post for everybody to see, or they can share the post with their network. And when they share that post, now all of a sudden my post is being seen not just by the people who follow my page, but by all of the people who are networked to that person who shared it. Shares, in my opinion, are like the single greatest engagement feature of Facebook. We want to be producing content that is highly shareable, because now we're opening up the possibility that our content is going to be seen by huge, huge numbers of people instead of just our narrow audience. So the Facebook shares are really huge. And then finally, clicks are not represented in this graphic here, but a click would be if somebody like clicked on this photo to expand it and make it larger and see it in full screen. So that's what you're going to see there. If we narrow down in on Facebook reactions, you might have recalled, for those of you who have been using Facebook for a number of years, there are, what is this now, 7 different reactions that people can give to a post. So years and years ago, it was just the like button, right? You can just like something. And then Facebook introduced Facebook reactions. I don't even know how long ago now. So now you can love it. You could laugh at it if it was funny. You could be surprised and give the wow reaction. You could be sad, or you can be angry. And then I think it was just earlier this year, they also added this care button and say like, oh, I care about you. These different reactions elicit certain responses in people. And it's important to consider, because if you post a piece of content that people like that elicit really negative responses, like a lot of people are like showing angry faces, that can elicit certain other emotional responses in the people who could see all of that, because all of that information is public. So if you are posting something and all of your reactions are going to the negative side, your audience will see that. A couple of years ago, there was also a rumor going around that for anything that elicited negative reactions, like the sad face or the angry face, Facebook would suppress that content and not populate it in as many news feeds. In other words, it wouldn't show that content to your followers. I have not experienced that at all. In fact, some of the content that I see over and over again, especially in the age of the election season, when so many people are negatively reacting to posts, I see that content a lot. So I don't know that that ever happened, but we do want to elicit responses in people, right? So it's okay to post content that gives people some sort of emotional response. Of course, we don't want to keep things always negative, but some content people might react negatively to it. The other big piece of the puzzle that I wanted to share here about Facebook is how the Facebook algorithm works. It's super secret, it's proprietary, nobody really knows how it works except Facebook. But based on anecdotal evidence and statistics, what we know is the more somebody interacts with your content, the more likely it is that Facebook will continue to feed that person your content. So remember I said it, your page likes and follows, that number doesn't really mean anything. What means something is your rate of engagement. So you could have 10,000 people who follow your page, but if your average rate of engagement is like 5 likes a post, that's a really low rate of engagement, right? Because you have the possibility of reaching 10,000 people plus all of those people's networks, which is huge, but instead you're only getting 5 reactions. That's a really, really low number. There's I think some good evidence to suggest that if you are consistently not engaging people, they're never going to see your content show up in their newsfeed. So even though they've told Facebook, I want to follow this page and I want to receive the updates, Facebook has to make some decisions, and they do that through algorithms. So rather than curating a feed of content for you that includes all of your friends and all of your page likes, it says, we're only going to choose the content that you interact with most. So you interact with Coca-Cola all the time. We're going to keep Coca-Cola in your feed, but you don't interact at all with Wayne County Extension. So we're going to stop feeding you Wayne County Extension's updates. So all of a sudden, Wayne County Extension just fell off the planet for that person. They no longer exist because they're no longer showing up in the newsfeed. It's really hard to re-engage people like that because they're no longer seeing your content. So the goal here is to get people to like and follow your page and get them consistently interacting with the content. Because by doing so, they're sending Facebook that message that, hey, yes, I do like this content and I want to keep seeing it. The second they stop interacting with it, the second Facebook's like, oh, okay, we're just going to kick it off your list and we're not going to show you this content anymore. So that's why it's really, really important to get people engaged quickly and keep them engaged over time. So let's talk a little bit about Facebook posts and what this looks like. Facebook has made quite a bit of change over the last year or two. They now have something called Creator Studio. Has anybody used Creator Studio before? It's like a whole other side of page management that you might be a little less familiar with. I'm going to talk about it very briefly and I'll kind of show you the user interface for it. But again, that's like Facebook 2.0 course, which we'll save for another time. So when you go to create a post on your Facebook page, it's going to look a little something like this. It's going to say create post. You can write something. Your audience by default is going to be public because page content is always public. You can change the background color of your post, which I'll show you once we dive into Facebook. And then you can say add to your post. You can add a photo. You can also add a button that allows people to message your page. And then if you click this ... the little ellipsis, then you have a bunch of other options as well. Facebook added this COVID-19 update to basically say if you are a local business and your post has something to do with hours due to COVID or opening operations or something due to COVID, then you can post that as a COVID update. That content will then be prioritized and Facebook will push it to more people. That said, don't be dishonest and click that it's a COVID update if it's really not. Don't try to trick the system. You can also say what feeling you're doing. You can do a watch party in the case of a video. You can check in if you are in a physical location and say, oh, hey, our county extension educators are out at this facility teaching a program, so you can check into that physical location. And then if that page or if that location has a page on Facebook, their followers will then see that content too, which is kind of nice. You can also say if you're raising money for charity. The photo and video button is probably what you'll be using the most. Has anybody done any Facebook advertising? Has anybody boosted posts or created a Facebook ad? Seeing Marianne shake her head no. Oh man, that's like a Facebook like 4.0 class or 401 class. So we're not going to be talking about it. I see Shalise putting thumbs up. I will say this. If you actually read the policy, the social media policy that came out of the university, I think last year, I want to say it was last March, so March of 2019, part of the application process now for applying for a new social media program, I think you have to say in there if you have any funding to boost posts or to advertise. There is kind of an expectation. And I think they maybe toned it down from the draft policy. In the draft policy, they basically said, we have an expectation that you will be like using money to advertise stuff on Facebook and boost posts. I think they must have gotten some negative commentary about that because they toned that language down in the final version of the social media policy to say, I think we suggest or we recommend that you use Facebook advertising or other social media advertising, but it's now no longer, I think, a hard requirement to do so. Faye says, not for your work, but another page that I manage. Yeah, Facebook advertising is its own big, huge thing. The great thing about it is if you're in a situation, like if your county educators in your county office are trying to market a certain program or event to an entirely new segment, and you're struggling, like, how do we even get in touch with this audience when we don't have contact information? You can use targeted Facebook ads to accomplish that goal. You can narrow down based on age, gender, social habits, by zip codes, so by where people live, socioeconomic, like demographic information. Like you can really target down Facebook advertising. So then Facebook's going to say, we are only going to push this sponsored advertisement to people who fit this criteria that you set. It can be a really, really powerful way to reach new and targeted audiences. So keep that in mind. And then you'll also notice that's the boost post that allows you to basically tell Facebook, we want this post to show up in the feeds of people who already follow us. If you're doing a good job of already engaging the people that follow you, you shouldn't ever need to really boost posts, but you can get more reach that way. And then you'll also see this big button now that says post scheduling and additional options are now available in Creator Studio. And again, I'll show you the interface for Creator Studio when we get into Facebook. The other thing I wanted to mention is the use of Facebook stories. This can be a really great way to reach new audiences and keep your presence sort of top of mind. So how many of you have seen Facebook stories show up in the top of your newsfeed every single time you log into Facebook? How many of you have used Facebook stories yourself? So Faye says yes. Good. It's not something that I've made a habit of, only because I think it's because I'm scared too. So like I've kind of stayed in my own, like, oh, I just post photos and I'll post, videos and memes. And Facebook stories I just haven't done a whole lot of. But basically your Facebook stories, you'll notice here I have several friends. So Cassie is a friend from high school. And then I have some other like photographer friends. Here's Emily Marison. You guys should all recognize Emily's name. So they have pushed content to their stories, which pushes that content to the top of my newsfeed because I'm friends or followers. This beautiful news, this is a page that I follow. And every single day when I wake up, because they post a new story every day, this is in the top of my newsfeed. So it's quick, easy access for people. And if you are consistently using it, you can kind of create that rhythm for people that they know, oh, hey, whatever county extension office now has their stories posted at the top of their page. So that's a really great feature to use as well. And I would implore you to explore that a little bit more in depth. So that was a lot of really basic information. What questions are starting to pop up for you before we jump into Facebook? Did anything come to mind? Was anything confusing? I am going to go ahead and open up my Facebook page. And we'll start to just kind of bump around Facebook, and I'll show you what this looks like from the back end.
Hey, Danae, this is Dawn. I did have a question.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned the stories, when you do the stories, how long do they stay in your, like, how long will people be able to see them? Is it in a definite amount of time, or is there a certain amount of time
It's
that they're?
24 hours, and I don't think that's changed. So it's 24 hours from when you post them. The great thing about stories, I didn't really explain that super well. The great thing about stories is you can push content to stories throughout the day. So it's not just one single piece of content. Like let's say you go to Let's just use Farm Science Review as an example. If Farm Science Review had happened in person this year, you could have like a dedicated person out there at Farm Science Review just creating content throughout the entire day and continuously feeding all of that content to the Farm Science Review story through the Farm Science Review page. So now somebody who maybe couldn't attend FSR one year, they can almost like live it like virtually. This year, of course, it was virtual, but they can like live it virtually through the eyes of that person who's posting. So, hey, I go to this vendor and I see this great content. They see that post there. Here's a short video that I took showing this other part of Farm Science Review. Now I see that video. So you create like a whole kind of timeline of events in your story. And it's a story. So it's not just a single piece of content, although a lot of the stories that I've seen, it's just one post. You can add text to them. You can add like emojis and other like stickers and stuff to those stories. You can make them fun and enlightening. I kind of mentioned I don't use stories a whole lot, but Shalice, you may on Instagram, because Instagram's kind of the same way. And I've seen some of your stories and you do such a great job. But if you have questions, reach out to me or Shalice and we can help kind of walk you through. I don't want to put Shalice on the spot, but we can kind of walk you through what stories looks like and how to get the most out of them.
Yeah, you can do all types of things with stories, especially Instagram stories. But I haven't really messed around with Facebook stories too much, so I wouldn't be able to give much advice on that. But Instagram stories, I definitely have some good tips and tricks on how to make it look pretty and engaging. So
maybe we can like tag team a session later this fall or like early next year on like getting the most out of like Facebook and Instagram stories. Jamie asked, does scheduling a post for a future date change its engagement numbers? This has been an issue of question for a number of years now. In my personal experience, anytime that I used to schedule a post, my engagement would plummet. And I wasn't getting near the engagement as if I just sat at my computer, posted the post, and then published it immediately. I have no idea logically why that would be. Yeah, I really don't have any idea. I was going to suggest that maybe it's because Facebook a couple of years ago came out and kind of announced we're going to start prioritizing content coming from individual people as opposed to content coming from pages, because they wanted to create more organic and meaningful conversation on the Facebook platform. They didn't just want it to be this spammy advertising platform that you're just seeing constant ads for, which we do anyway. So my only guess is that they basically thought that the scheduled posts were likely coming from brands, so that they were kind of maybe silencing those more, but I don't even know if that makes sense. So in my personal experience, I have seen less engagement from pre-scheduled posts. When I have mentioned that to other people, they have said the exact same thing. That said, what I've told people or recommended that people do to test that out is create two pretty similar posts with pretty similar content, not the exact same, because you don't want people questioning like, why did you post the exact same thing twice, but post something in one way and pre-schedule it, and then post something somewhat similar, like same kind of content area, maybe similar messaging, similar photo or video if you're posting a video or photo, and just post that immediately and do it, same day of the week, same time of the day, and see if there's a huge difference in engagement. That's what we call like A/B testing in marketing. Like test it out and see if one elicits more or less engagement. So Faye said, it depends because you pre-schedule some of your content on your suicide prevention page and you haven't seen a difference. So yeah, it really, I think, just depends. So keep those questions coming in. These are great. So a couple of different things I wanted to point out. First of all, this is, I think what Facebook is calling the new Facebook. They made this transition, I think, earlier this year. And I work in innovation, but at the same time, I'm like, please don't change Facebook again. And I've been like very resistant to like logging onto the new Facebook. There is a big button here on my page that says, if you'd like to switch back to old Facebook for 48 hours or classic Facebook, you can. I say that because the interface that you're seeing now is the new Facebook interface. So if it looks a little bit different than what you're seeing on your screen, it's likely because you're still on classic Facebook. And let me know if you have any specific questions about that. So a couple of things I wanted to point out. You have this big edit follow button under your cover photo. And if you click that, you should be able to go to edit button, and then it'll pull up a pop-up menu with a bunch of different options. So right now, mine just says follow, so people can easily follow my Chasing Bugs page. Depending on what you want people to do, you can provide a phone number for people to call your county extension office. You can provide a web address so you can do contact us and link them directly to your contact page on your county website. You can put in an email and people will be directed to a particular email that you would have to select. If you have a newsletter, you can have people directed to the subscription form for the newsletter. It's really great because you want to keep people engaged with you, and this allows them to engage with you outside the Facebook platform, which is what we ultimately want. We don't just want our followers to be our followers on Facebook. So I would encourage you to consider what that button should be for your specific pages that you manage. We also mentioned a little bit earlier, like the create post stuff. If you hit that big create post, it will pop up a box for you. That's where you would be able to input whatever it is that you want to say. You can click that background button and you can pull up some interesting background selections that will show behind text. The backgrounds don't work if you're just posting like a photo or a video, but if you're doing a text only post, you can put some backgrounds in. Make sure that it's appropriate. Like I'm not sure that this one is appropriate for most situations, but if you're doing like a compost class, like a manure compost class, I don't know, maybe something like that could be appropriate. But it is kind of just silly too. So it makes people laugh, and it's okay to make people laugh sometimes. I want to get that out of there so my next post doesn't have that. You can also add emojis by clicking the little emoji button. People love emojis. You can like have whole conversations in emojis these days. So think about what emojis you might add. You can also add hashtags to post. So of course a hashtag would be, it helps people create a whole like curated feed of content. So notice how I have a couple popping up here that are ones that I use a lot. So if I'm doing something like leave the leaves, I would type the hashtag in here. And when I post this, that's going to be a clickable link. So if people click that, it will take them to a whole curated feed of everybody who's used that hashtag before. That is really great if you have, for example, an event and you are inviting people to use a hashtag to post about their experience at your event, because now everybody who's there or those who aren't there but want to receive the updates, now they can have like a whole curated feed of all the content that's coming from that event, which is great. The other thing I want to mention here is notice how I capitalize the first letter of every word in this. Usually, like if I just clicked on that created two. The one that was already in there was not capitalized. The reason why it's important to capitalize hashtags, regardless of what platform you're using, is because screen readers cannot differentiate the words unless the words are capitalized. So from an accessibility standpoint, we should be capitalizing our hashtags to ensure that people who are using a screen reader to engage with the content don't just get a big gibberish word, because that's exactly what a screen reader would read that as, is just gibberish. So if you're going to use a hashtag, just make sure you capitalize those first letters. And then notice how that big button down here now, post scheduling and additional options are available in Creator Studio. And I promised you I would show you Creator Studio. This is something that, to be honest, I haven't played around with a whole lot, but you can see now when I go here, a whole curated feed of content that shows up of my previous post. There's insights that you can get. There's the monetization if you're doing Facebook advertising. But here, I'm just going to hit create post. You can add stuff directly to your story, as we talked about earlier. You can upload a video. You can upload multiple videos. You can go live if you're doing something live. And you can also post video across multiple pages. So if you're managing multiple pages and you want to push content to all of those at the same time, you can use Creator Studio for that. Here, I'm just going to click post. It's going to take a few seconds to load. And now all of a sudden, Dawn says yes. You love emojis, same. I use way too many emojis. So here you have a couple different options. You'll notice like live video, the multimedia. I would invite you to explore multimedia because you can actually create some really cool, this instant experience, for example. You can select a canvas, and I've tried to do this before. So you can add buttons, you can add a carousel of photos, you can add headers, videos, text blocks. So let's just say I want to add like a photo here, but then I want to add another component down here, and that's going to be a text block. Again, this is like Facebook like way advanced, so I'm not going to get too much into this, but it creates an instant experience that still lives within the Facebook platform, but you can include photos, you can include videos. It basically creates almost like a customized landing page for people to learn about a topic. So you might be wondering right now, like, why would we ever use this? But if you have a really big event coming up in your county, you can create a whole customized content experience and use that as a marketing platform to get people to register for your event. So, you have some different content down here, and add a component and then choose a button. And then that button would be like, register or click here to register for the program. And when they click that, it would take them to like the event registration, but it creates a really unique multimedia experience for folks. That's a whole big thing though to do. Dawn, that's funny. So that's Creator Studio. Again, I'm not going to go too much more into depth on that because it's just a little bit too advanced for, I think, the purpose of today. So let's go ahead and get out of there. I'm going to discard all my changes. And now we're going to dig into some settings because that is what I want to show you next. And then we'll kind of wrap up with a conversation about Facebook Insights because that's really important too. So over on the left-hand navigation menu, the very last item I see down here is settings. I wanted to just point out a few different things. First of all, there are like hundreds of settings now that are available to control with your Facebook page. I'm not going to go through tediously one by one, but I would invite you to go through and make sure that your settings are where you want them. So you have page visibility. Your page should be published so that people can see it. Here is where you can access or select whether or not you want visitors to post on your page. So for my personal page, I allow anyone to post here. Most of what I get is like maybe once a week, somebody posts a bug photo and says, hey, does anybody know what this bug is? It does kind of create some good community conversation, but it also provides one more mechanism for people to reach out to you. And therefore it creates an expectation that you will respond to them. So if you know you're not going to be managing this, then just edit this and don't allow people. You could disable posts, just don't allow it. Likewise, under messages, right now, I've shut my messages off on this page because I was receiving so many insect identification requests, and I don't do that for people. I've had people from Scotland send me photos of wasps and say, hey, what is this? I don't know. I'm not in Scotland. I don't know insect species in Scotland. So I finally just shut that off because I could not keep up with it. And if you don't keep up with messages, Facebook publicly like advertises your response rate to messages if you have those turned on. So Facebook will tell people this page is really responsive or this page is not responsive at all to messages. So finally I was just like, nope, I'm shutting it off so that I don't have to like be compelled to wake up at 2 a.m. and answer your Scotland wasp question so that I'm not like getting, bashed on my page for that. I might turn that back on at some point. You can also allow people to tag your page, which is really great. Tagging ability, only people who help manage a page can tag. Oh, photos, that's photo tagging. Others tagging this page, I allow other people to tag my page because you wouldn't believe how many people, like they see a really funny meme on Facebook of a bug or something, and they tag my Chasing Bugs page just to say, hey, I wanted to make sure that you like see this because it's funny and I thought that you would like it. So I allow people to tag. There's a lot of other things here too. I have my profanity filter set to strong so that people stop cursing at me. I'm just kidding. I don't receive a lot of comments like that. But just in case, like it's the age of like politics and like sometimes, people just feel very compelled to post inappropriate things for whatever reason. So I have my profanity filter set to strong. You can also block certain words. So if you're getting consistent like negative comments around a particular topic, you can block those words entirely so that when somebody tries to comment using those words, they can't. So again, just some control features that you have at your disposal. Some other things, I would always recommend you go into your page info, make sure you have your name, set your username. This is how people will tag you. And your tag becomes an @ symbol and then your name. So mine is just my page name. So if somebody wants to tag me, they do @ChasingBugs, and that becomes a hyperlinked, like clickable link that people can then click and access my page. If you don't have a username by default, go into your page settings and create a username, something short, memorable, simple. Don't put something like Wayne County OSU extension 4-H something like that's really long. So try to keep it short and sweet and simple so that people can easily reach you. Also make sure you have categories represented here. I don't allow people to like call me and stuff. So I've disabled phone numbers, email, location, but make sure that all of your county information is here and that links back to your county extension page because it's an easy way for people to find you. You can also change your hours of operation. This is really important, especially if your hours are still limited due to COVID. Make sure that you go in here and notice how there's now a box with like temporary service changes. You can say, you know, we're open with service changes. Here are the hours that we're open each day for you to come drop in. A surprising number of people use Facebook to see when businesses are open. So people will be looking at your Facebook page for data like that. And the more that you can give them, the better. All right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else in settings that I really wanted to talk about here. I guess I will mention page roles because this is an important part of our OSU policy. So right now I am the only admin for this page because it's mine. And I've also allowed Facebook to tag me as the administrator. So people can see that me, Danae Wolfe, is the administrator for this page. You might not want that. You might want to completely disconnect your personal profile from your work profile. And that is perfectly acceptable. And I would probably recommend that you do that. The other thing that you'll want to keep in mind is OSU policy dictates that you have at least 2 administrators on a Facebook page so that in the case that an administrator leaves, you're not leaving the page completely unattended. And I've had so many questions in the past from people saying this, like program assistant was the administrator for the Facebook page. They left, they never assigned anybody else ownership to the page, and now we literally cannot access it. So you may have a great page and a great following, but now you have no administrative control of that page whatsoever. So ensure that you have at least 2 people on the page. You can also add more. They don't have to be a full administrator. You can add people as editors. I'm trying to think of where all the different page roles are here, right here. So as a full admin, be careful with that because full admins also have the ability to delete pages. So you don't want to be in a situation where somebody like leaves on bad terms and they're like, haha, I'm taking Facebook with me. And they like delete the page. So just ensure that you kind of understand what those page roles do and do not allow. You can also just add people like purely as an advertiser, like just to go in and create ads. You're probably not going to use that feature, but moderator, editor, admin are the 3 primary roles that you'll be using there. What questions are popping up for you in some of these setting pieces? Any questions that you're thinking about? I wanted to just mention before we wrap up the conversation, I wanted to mention insights, and I would encourage you all to, at some point in the near future, to go into your insights so that you can understand who is currently following your page. Insights you can access over here on the left-hand navigation menu just by clicking Insights. And this is going to open up a whole new menu for you that has a ton of information about who is engaging with your page. If you just scroll down on that primary Insights page and go down to your 5 most recent posts, and then scroll down to where it says see all posts and click that link. This is going to give you a really good idea of some of your most engaging content. So it'll show you the type of content. Was it a photo? Was it a video? Some of this might just be, here was a link. But you can really just easily get a snapshot over, okay, which posts were the most engaging? The fly post on Pence's head during the last debate, that was my most engaging post over the last month, but it's relevant to my page because it's about bugs. That's why I posted it. Like it was a fly. And people love that, right? Because it connects them back to my brand. Some of the other stuff, here was a post about leaf blowing and leaving your leaves. So that was really engaging. I would encourage you to just explore your demographics here so that you can see which posts are eliciting the most engagement, and then start to consider why, and then consider how you can do more of that. You'll also get a really good snapshot of your audience and when they are spending time online. So mine's like really generic. There's no real surprises. People spend a pretty similar amount of time on Facebook across every day of the week. And then between like the average working hours of like 6 a.m. until, 6 p.m. So that's pretty traditional. The other thing that you can do, it is under people. Yeah. So under people, you can get a really good snapshot of some of the demographics of your audience. So right now I know that 70% of my page followers identify as women. And that's really powerful because now I kind of know the bulk of who my audience is. So I might narrow down my messaging to reach those specific people. Because most of your county offices are probably like in existence to meet the needs of your local community, the people and like the geographic region might be mostly like United States, and then you'll get like a city breakdown as well. But you can kind of see, is there a certain city popping up that most of your followers come from? Different languages that might be spoken. It's just kind of a really good snapshot. You can also take a look at this is your fans, your followers, the people that you're actually reaching, and then the people who are actually engaging with your post. So even though 70% of my page followers are women, it's almost 80% of the people who are engaging with my content. So those are some really good numbers. You can also see a breakdown of ages. So I know that the most people are women between the ages of 35 and 44. So people who are just like me, which is great because now I know exactly like what content to produce, because these are people that are probably very similar to me in age and demographic. But take a look at that so that you can kind of see who you're reaching, and it just might give you some really good insights. Facebook is an incredibly powerful tool. It's almost scarily powerful, and don't be afraid of it. And on that note, I wanted to show you one final thing, which is Facebook for Business, or Facebook Blueprint. It is a whole learning platform that takes a deep dive into the use of Facebook for Business. And I would encourage you, in all of the free time that nobody has, I would encourage you to just sift around on Facebook for Business. I'll go ahead and drop this link in the chat for you all. And yeah, if you want to try and just learn a few new skills, you can just kind of bum around on here. Get started with Facebook pages would be a really good place to just get started and look at some of the video content and learn. There's so much out there. Also, YouTube is like your best friend when it comes to learning any new skill these days. So with that, it's 1:57. We have a few minutes for any questions or wrap up. Shalise, if you have anything you want to say as a wrap up, I don't know.
Well,
What questions do you have?
Ask if you have anything else you wanted to wrap up with, but yeah, that works too.
I think that's everything I have. Feel free to reach out with questions. I'm really interested in kind of narrowing down content strategy too. So if you're like, we have a really big initiative coming up in the community and we know that we want to do something with social media, but we're just not sure really what or how to frame the messaging or what specific pieces of content we should be thinking about, feel free to reach out to the LOD unit and we can kind of help walk you through at least some like big ideas for things to think about. And Shalise, you're like a rock star on Instagram in particular, which is a platform that I don't use nearly as much. But we have some skills. We have some skills across the unit, and we can help you. We can help you build your skills too. Mm-hmm. Marianne, yes, there's so much more. There's so much to Facebook. I've been on Facebook now for 15 years, which is weird to think about. I started Facebook like when they first opened up, and I was just a wee college student. So it's changed a lot. It's a really powerful tool. And we know that like over 2 billion people, I think it is, are using it daily. So it's wild, it's big. So thank you. Thanks for being here with me this afternoon. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. I'll be back to talk a little bit about content strategy on Monday. And that will kind of take us into a deep dive on like content strategy. So thanks for being here with me.
Thank you, Danae.
And I'll see you again.
See you later, y'all. I'm gonna stop.
Bye.